Welcome to Spirit Outspoken, where we dive deep into the realms of spirituality, healing, and the beautiful chaos we call life. From ancient traditions to modern practices, we are going to explore it all. Whether you're a newbie or a seasoned seeker, you're guaranteed to find something that inspires, challenges, and intrigues you here.
So grab your favorite beverage, find a cozy spot to curl up, and join us for Spirit Outspoken.
Hello and welcome to today's episode of Spirit Outspoken. We are so blessed, so lucky to have today's guest. I personally couldn't be more excited because anybody who knows me and anybody who's been listening to Spirit Outspoken knows my obsession with all things astrology. I would consider that to be the gateway for me into all things spirituality. So we are so honored to have a local Minnesotan who specializes in astrology. So Dana Holtz, welcome. We're so excited. Dana is the founder of Bright Sky Astrology. So what you do is you focus on evolutionary astrology. So focusing on past lives, past life experiences, because now correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of what's rooted in astrology is our past experiences and then leveraging the planetary energies in this life to maximize what we're here to do, right? So it's all very interconnected.
That is correct. You hit evolutionary astrology on the nose. Very good.
Okay, good. Ding, ding, ding. All right. So one thing that I thought about that was really cool in your bio is that you're an Aquarius sun and a Gemini rising.
Mhm.
And I know Rachel and I, when we first connected with you, like even before we talked in person, we were like, oh my gosh, we love Dana. Like her energy's so great. And I'm a Gemini sun and Gemini everything, really, as you
You are super Gemini. Look at that. Wow.
I know the most Gemini you could be. And Rachel has an Aquarius moon, right? So it's like there's a lot of reasons for why we feel an energetic connection to people that are grounded in astrology. So
We're
talk so excited.
Days on all these overlapping energy compatibilities among the three of us. After I've looked at your charts, there's a lot going on here.
Yes, today is a podcast, tomorrow's a friendship. I can see it already. I can see it already. So Dana, I'm so curious because you have such an interesting past in life. And our goal here at Spirit Outspoken is to sometimes demystify a lot of these spiritual aspects. And I think, for me and Rach especially, and I know a lot of other people, their exposure to astrology is like the pop culture astrology. But what we're finding is really this deep movement of people with very varied backgrounds kind of stumbling into astrology and developing their work around that. So can you just tell us a little bit about how you got here and how you become an evolutionary astrologist?
Yeah, well, I started my career in law. So I moved to Minnesota 2 decades ago to go to law school. I thought I was going to be a lawyer. And I started my career in law. And then I don't know. Well, I've always had an affinity for birthdays. I have this weird superpower that I will remember your birthday. You tell me once and I will remember you. Because I have this visual map of the yearly calendar. And if you tell me what your birthday is, your face shows up on that visual calendar.
Wow.
More about that visual calendar in a minute. But I've always had that kind of superpower, always been interested in people's birthdays. And it's really interesting to me, like I'm attracted to people who have birthdays at certain times of the year. And I thought, that's really interesting. And so then I got into astrology because I was trying to, kind of understand a stage in life and a weird relationship and, stuff that we all go through. And a good friend of mine, we were having lunch and she said, you should meet my old neighbor. She's an astrologer. You guys could talk about this stuff. And I had a meeting with her and it was amazing. And I did another reading with her. And then I became her mentee. She became my mentor. And I thought, oh, all this stuff is just fascinating. And I just was personally interested. It was personal study. And then at some point, friends started asking me, hey, can you look at my chart? Tell me what's going on. I'm dealing with a difficult thing at work. My friend's dealing with a difficult thing with her child. They're going through this stuff. Can you, at least tell me what's going on? How long is it going to last? So I'd look and I'd do like little mini readings almost, just look at a particular area of life and say, oh, this is what's going on. And then I had someone ask for a full reading. friend of a friend said, "What do you want for your birthday?" "Oh, I want you to get me a reading with Dana." I'm like, I don't even
Oh.
do readings. I don't do this professionally. I've never thought of doing this professionally, but I thought, you know what? I'll do it for free. It'll be fun. We'll have a good time. It was one of the most enriching, rewarding experiences of my entire life. And I got off that Zoom call with her and I thought, I got to do this as much as possible. It was so rewarding. And the thing that I got from it was it's validating for people to see, oh my gosh, I chose to be the way I am. The things that maybe I'm carrying around, this baggage I've had around personality types, I call it how you're hardwired.
Mhm.
It's not bad. Other people might, you know, get on my case for this, or I might feel bad about it because I don't fit in here or there. But you look at this chart and I don't know these people. I just do readings with total strangers. And I've had strangers cry on the Zoom meeting because within like the first 10 minutes, we start talking about something that they've been carrying around. They feel bad about it. And it's validating because they realize, oh my gosh, I chose to be the person that I am. I chose to walk this life with this personality. It's okay to be me. And that was kind of like that was the kickoff for me. Like, I gotta do this as much as possible. And it's been a wild ride and I'm absolutely loving every second of it.
That is one thing that I think is so beautiful about this work is kind of transforming your own perspective on who you are, why you're here. It gives everything purpose and
Mhm.
reason. And I just think it can bring so much enlightenment and clarity and perspective to people who maybe, think that they don't fit a certain mold or they need to be more this way or that way. And it's like, no, you were created in a certain way for a certain purpose, and you're here to do a certain thing. And I think that's
Mhm.
so cool.
Yeah. And to get to your point, Jason, about the gateway, then I got into astrology, which got me into all kinds of other things that you guys cover on your podcast. So when I met you, I'm like, there are other people out there who are interested in this stuff that I'm interested in. I'm not just this, lawyer person sitting in my office, scared to tell people that I'm into astrology and all the other kind of stuff because it's fascinating. It is a gateway to a whole other world of looking at our physical reality in many different ways. So
It's so true. And like even the hard-nosed skeptics, Rachel and I laugh because our husbands are like very entertained by us, but at the same time, they may not totally jump in, to the deep
Mhm.
end of the spiritual pool. But I mean, my husband has now gotten to this point where I went through an exercise where I was evaluating my kids' charts. And I was like, okay, I'm like really trying to understand them and their challenges and how I can parent them in the most effective way, knowing how I'm, to use your words, hardwired. And my husband was like, oh my gosh. I literally just put up notes and was like, hey, read this. And I'm not like you. I call myself an amateur astrologer. I have to like research everything and it takes me some time. So
all that Gemini energy. Oh my gosh, it's just coming through with you.
exactly. I got Stephen Forrest's book on a
Yes.
recommendation, Inner Sky.
Okay.
And
Yes, he's a
yeah,
great source.
and he writes like a poet. So obviously I'm
Mhm.
obsessed with him. But Charlie, my husband, was out of town and I was like with the kids solo and I read the entire book in 3 days. I'd be like hanging out with the kids and I was like, and I'm like absorbing this book. But it was
Mhm.
so illuminating because, and to what Rachel was saying too, it applies meaning. It applies, significance. And I think it's also helped me realize that as part of our soul's evolutionary journey, the way that our souls perceive challenges or things that help us transform are very different than like the human mind and the
Yeah.
ego,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
astrology is so helpful when we think about healing, right? My soul had a hand in kind of designing what this, and we have free will. It's not saying it's like,
Yes.
okay, this is what it's going to be.
Right. I'm glad you brought that up because there'd be no point to this. We would just be robots.
Exactly. So
Mhm.
it eases the human suffering in a way
Yeah.
to say, okay, I now have labels or terms or understanding for a
Mhm.
lot of the things that I've never been able to explain.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it also gives us a glimpse into how intricate every human is and how much thought went into this personality and this life and this journey that you're on. And there's mathematical precision to it. So when we feel like we're just floating around in life and it's just chaotic and we don't know what to expect, there is mathematical precision to this ride that we're on. And the more you can get into it and dig into it, it gives that sense of security sometimes in a world where you feel like, "Oh my gosh, what is coming next?" And that's one thing I've gotten to do with friends and with clients is to help them at least look on the horizon and say, "Okay, how long is this particular struggle point gonna last? Or is this something that I have to deal with throughout my life in some way?" And, to your point about, your husband, I did a reading for someone that I do know fairly well, and she was going through oh my gosh. So she decided to do every big life thing at one time. Get married, move cross country,
Okay.
start a new job, and have a baby, and sell their house.
Oh my
All in,
God.
like, 18 months to 2 years. And we did her reading, and, this is the one who cried, you know?
I'm sure she knows.
Yeah. Well, but I kinda helped lift that, "It's okay to be exactly the way you are, you planned it this way." And then we were looking at kind of this struggle point that she's going through with all this stuff, and I said, "You've got about 6 more months of this to go, probably." And then a while later, she texted me and she goes, "My husband wants me to ask you, how much longer do we have of this?" Just based on that one reading, her husband is now, "Can you please ask your astro guru to find out how longer?" Because they are just like a series of things, and now they're just smooth sailing. They got through that challenging time, and now they're just, set and doing it, so
I love that. So, Dana, the one thing that you've mentioned a couple times is how mathematically precise this whole process is. And I think that for me was the biggest eye-opening experience and thing that I
just because you're a Virgo rising and you like precision, you're a spreadsheet.
yeah, it's so true. It is so true. But that was when I first got my first reading, I was blown away. Cause like Jason said, before that, my only experience was in the newspaper or a magazine,
Yeah.
this kind of vague horoscope that I would look at. And so when I actually had it done and I realized and saw on this piece of paper,
Mhm.
all these lines, and it basically looked like this very detailed graph.
Mhm.
I was blown away by how mathematical this whole
Yeah.
process is.
Yep, and your soul picked that exact second that you were born because it wanted to have a certain experience in this life,
So cool.
and in order to get that, it had to the soul that well, this kinda gets to why astrology works.
Hmm.
Kind of the million-dollar question, right? Why does astrology work? The way I understand it is before you're born, your soul decides what kind of life it wants to have with the certain people it wants to have, certain experiences. And I don't call them lessons. Like you said, this is not a, you're screwed kind of thing. This is the type of experience your soul wants to have. And when you look at the energies of all the planets, and we think of the moon and the sun and all these asteroids, they're all planetary bodies. They exert a certain energy on the earth, and the way that they are lined up with one another, that mathematical precision affects the energy of the earth at any given second. And so when your soul wants to have a certain experience, it looks at a certain place on the earth to get that certain mathematical precision, all those, that formula, it's like a formula for your life. The soul has to get itself to a certain energy that matches that. And that's the moment you pop into physical reality. That's the moment you're born. So you kind of get yourself to that certain vibration, that certain wavelength as a soul, and then so that you can pop in and match the vibration of that exact second. And that's when you come in, and then you have that formula to play out for your life. So it is very intricate.
Isn't that so cool? And I think too, like, going back to what you were saying about how for so long people have feared astrology, it's been viewed as taboo.
Mhm.
And, one of our passions at Spirit Outspoken is, like I said, demystifying or even destigmatizing a lot of
Yeah.
this, right? Yeah. And I take a lot of heart in knowing and thinking, like, if our God created the universe and every planet and every star, why wouldn't we assume that they were based on an intelligent design
Yeah.
to help our soul and manifest
Yeah.
our highest potential? I'm like, duh, that makes
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
much more sense. And like, by the way, you guys, three wise men were astrologers. Okay. They actually think current scientists now and astronomers, not just astrologers, now think Jupiter was conjunct Saturn and that
Oh.
created the huge bright star. which
Yeah.
led them to Jesus, right? So it's like we've seen this play out. And by the way, the whole thing started the age of Pisces, the
Yeah.
Christian fish. It's all interconnected,
It's
right?
all connected.
Yeah. So if we take the fear out and step back a little bit, it, we can exist in both worlds, I
Yeah,
guess is
we
what.
can.
Yeah.
Totally agree with you. I think astrology is the answer key to the human experience. And if we believe that the universe was created by an intelligent source, whatever you want to call it, why not use this resource that we were given to help ourselves navigate this, frankly, rough experience that is human life? And getting back to what I mentioned earlier about my visual calendar in my head. So, ever since I was a little kid, like early memories, I had a visual calendar in my head of, January to December and all the months in between. And I thought everybody had this. I thought everybody had a visual calendar in their head of what it looked like. And the first time I did an astrology reading, I got my astrology and my natal chart. It was the picture that I had in my head since I was a little kid.
Oh my
So
God.
January was at the top.
No.
That's where, so if you look at my wheel, January's at the top, then February, March, and it goes all the way around to December at the top. And, the house system that I use is an unequal system. So the different houses are going to be different sizes. And in my visual calendar, not all the months are the same size. They correlate to the size of those houses within my natal chart.
Yeah.
Way I think
That's crazy.
I'm destined to do this. I have to do this. This is a real thing.
Yes.
I remembered. I think what that was, that calendar that I saw in my head was my soul before I was born looked and saw, okay, this is the experience I want. This is the visual representation of it according to, like the vision of Earth looking up at the sky. That's the one I want. And I remembered it. There's some soul memory deep in my
Exactly.
soul DNA.
Exactly. The synchronicities that Rachel and I both have seen play out over astrology is crazy. Like, we'll just be having a week and we're like, oh, we're just feeling this like big burst of energy. And I'll just do a little research and we're like, oh, well, that explains it.
Yeah. So I think it really, really helps when you can kind of look ahead and say, okay, when is a good time for me to plan this? Or when should I maybe sit back and maybe keep my anger in check, when certain things are happening. You might be more volatile at this time. So just be aware of that. So maybe you don't go off half cocked to your boss or whatever. Yeah, good to just be aware of that.
Yes. So I have a question, Dana. Do you find that people tend to come to you with similar questions? Is it kind of all over the board? Is there usually something that's prompted them to kind of seek an alternative answer or some guidance?
Yeah, there's kind of 3 areas of astrology that people will usually seek out a practitioner for. 1, relationships, obviously. 2 is work, and 3 is health. There are many other areas of life we can explore, but those are usually the big 3. It's like something's going on with my health, something's going on with my relationships, something is going on with my job, and they want a little bit of guidance. And so I do transit charts. I call it you and your future. We look at you, we analyze your personality, how are you hardwired, and then we look at kind of things that are coming down the road in specific areas of life that you want to explore. The other type of reading I do in astrology is called synastry. I call it you and your relationships. Okay, let's look at you and another person. We'll put your charts in an overlay. We'll overlay them and see how the two of you work together. Maybe soul contracts you came into this life to experience together. And I've actually been doing a lot of parent-child synastry
Mm,
recently. Mother and daughter, and then a mother and son combos. A lot of moms are coming and saying, okay, what am I supposed to be doing in my child's life, and vice versa? It's been really fascinating. I had a good friend, and she had like one of those miracle babies. Like everything was against her, and she was in her mid 40s, didn't think she was ever going to have a baby. And then boom, during the pandemic, gets pregnant. So she has a baby on the grand conjunction that we had, December of 2019. And they have some really serious, interesting, fun soul contract lineups. That baby knew what she was doing.
not that I think is so cool too is that through this, I found in one of my readings that certain people in your life, maybe that are challenging or you have conflict with, Like, some of those are actually designed in your life
Yeah,
intentionally to be your greatest teacher
they
and
are.
help you step up in a way or to help you learn something. And I just think it has this beautiful way of helping you reframe even
Yeah.
challenging things or things that you might see as negative in your human mind. But to see the higher purpose in that is so cool.
Yeah, they create what I call friction points in your life. And, planets, when they transit your chart in a certain way, they create friction points that prompt you to kind of look at things a different way, act a different way, make changes. But then there are people also in your life that are just friction points from day one. And sometimes that's really good friction. It's kind of
Mhm.
energetic, like the two of you. You have good, chemistry and electricity between the two of you. But then there's also those relationships that are just rough because maybe you need to see life in a different way. Maybe you wanted to have an experience. Past life was all about this certain way of life, and this person is kind of prompting you and creating a friction point to maybe make you make a little bit of a turn and do things a little differently in this life. And not because one is bad and one is good. It's just you're looking for balance. Like I had too much of that. I had a lot of that in my past lives. Now I'm looking to have a little bit of this in my life.
Yeah. I just think that's so cool. It helps us see
Yeah.
the world in a whole new way.
Yeah. But that's what I love about evolutionary astrology is we think about maybe we were raised to think you only get one time around. We are multifaceted beings. And so one
Yeah.
time is not enough to do all the things that our soul wants to do. And we can look at that in your chart to say where did you come from and where are you going in this life?
I think that's so cool. Can you also just touch on, because I just learned from you that there's actually different sectors of astrology, which I did not know.
Yeah,
Can you just touch on what the other ones are?
there are more than I can possibly even get into. I mean, there's different schools of astrology. There's kind of Eastern and Western. And the one that we're kind of talking about today is kind of Western astrology. And then there's Eastern astrology that was practiced in the Eastern countries like India and the Asian countries. But Western astrology is kind of what we're talking about here today. But there are medical astrologers who specialize in medical. There are financial astrologers who specialize in looking at things like the financial markets and people's personal finances. You know, Ronald and Nancy Reagan, they were way into astrology and they made a lot of their decisions based on that. So there are political astrologers out there who look at sort of what we call mundane astrology or world events, evolutionary astrology, which is what I practice. So there are so many different facets, and astrology's been around for so many thousands of years that different areas have broken off, but this just goes into the whole mathematical precision. It's kind of like medicine where there's so many specialties, and law, there are so many specialties. Well,
Right.
astrology is so complex. People will go down the avenue that most matches their talents and how they can best help other people. And, I guess what I do is sort of a therapeutic style
Hmm.
of astrology. Yeah. So evolutionary astrology, the way I do it is sort of a therapeutic style.
Yeah. So I want to touch on that because I think it's so important when you're first navigating astrology to work with somebody. You know what I mean? So can you help us understand, what you almost as like an astrology therapist, kind of like bring to the table,
Yeah.
usher people through some of those things that might be considered a little less favorable in a
Yeah.
chart?
So let's use Pluto as an example. And if you have any knowledge of Pluto, you know that that is a very powerful planet. It is associated with things like death and rebirth, divorce, taboo, occult. And you think, oh my gosh, if Pluto is transiting one of my planets, or if Pluto is aligned certain way with one of my planets in my natal chart, I'm just going to be screwed for the rest of my life. So another example, very close friend of mine was dealing with a serious Pluto transit. Pluto was transiting her moon, which just means that Pluto was today in the sky at the point in same point in the sky that her moon was when she was born. The moon, as we said earlier, process is the way we process our emotions. Pluto moves through the sky very slowly because it's, the outer planet. And so when it's transiting one of your planets in your natal chart in a certain way, it's going to be doing it for a long time. It takes years. And Pluto's job is to clear away the crap, clear away the stuff that we have not dealt with so
Mhm.
that we can be successful in the next phase of our life. It's not here to make you miserable. It's not here to ruin your life, but that's where free will comes in. You can push against it, you can resist it, you can refuse to change, and then the next phase of your life is not gonna be as successful. But if you say, "All right, I'm having a challenging time, what am I gonna do about it? How am I gonna deal with this? How am I going to try to come out of this positively on the other end?"
Yes.
Hopefully, that's what she did. I mean, horrible stuff happened in her life, but now she's in the best place she's ever been because of that. But again, that's Pluto's job, is just to clear away the crap. You haven't dealt with this stuff. I'm going to clear it away so that you can be successful. So I'm pushing you. I'm creating a friction point to get you to the experience that your soul wanted to have. And a lot of these stuff that we didn't deal with isn't just from this life. It's from past lives.
Yes.
And so that's one of the things that's really good about talking to somebody who can put this in a frame. They can frame it up so you have a different reference point to look at it, say, okay, this is not trying to kill me. This point in my life will be over at some point, but this is what I'm dealing this, and this is why it's happening in this area of my life.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that that's so key. And I personally went through a very hard time last fall. Some like really intense stuff. And as soon as things lifted, as soon as it just moved on, I was like, oh my gosh, Pluto just transited out of Scorpio, right? It was a very intense period for me. And to the literal day,
Yeah.
it shifted and I had to face my biggest fears. I had to stare death head on. I had to, and Jenna, I think I shared this with you. My son was diagnosed with leukemia when he was 5. He's going
Mhm.
through treatment now, but we went through a really challenging period. And it was like, and it was a hindsight right? Like I didn't recognize all this, but again, I've noticed that for myself personally, astrology makes its way to me when I need it most.
Yeah.
And then it's almost like I feel like that's how God communicates to me in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And I went through that period and I faced my darkest fears and I emerged a better version of myself. And one of the things that helps me now when I go through those periods is, you surrender. You
Mhm.
surrender. And like you're surrendering to that cycle of your life. You're surrendering to the circumstances. And I just hang on to like, this is for my highest good. Like I am safe. All things are exactly as it should be because I decided I had a hand in this, how I wanted to grow and exist in this lifetime. And I feel like personally, that's where astrology has really helped me
Yeah.
is, making me feel seen and validated when you do go through challenging times.
Yeah. Yeah. It's great. Again, it validates and it gives you a sense of perspective that you didn't have before, that, okay, it's not all chaotic. I do have some measure of control because I can understand. I can understand this. And it still stinks. It's still really hard, but
Yeah.
there's an end to it. And I'm going to come out a better person on the other side.
At 100%.
So, of course, I had to get your birth times and birth locations when we first met to talk about this podcast, and I had to dive into them, and I did so as soon as we got off of our initial call because I was so excited to see all the things about you. It kind of peek behind the curtain, crawl inside your personality, and dig around for a little bit.
Uh-oh. Yeah,
I
it's a scary place, isn't it,
no,
Dan?
no, it's not a scary place. But I love information. That's a Gemini trait. I'm a Gemini rising, so I love all the information and collating information and finding out more and more and more. And so I'm going to do you in alphabetical order. So again, we're going to start with Jasa.
Okay.
And I just want to touch on a few of the big things that are really important in looking at a natal chart because obviously readings can take I usually do hour readings, but most of the time it's not enough. So we're just going to touch on a few things that I found that are kind of the big stuff. So Jasa, as I mentioned earlier, you are Virgo rising,
Mhm.
which means that you're organized and you are methodical in everything that you do. You like details. And the rising, let's just talk about what that is. That is, if you the moment of your birth, if you look to the eastern horizon where the sun comes up, what is the constellation? What is the sign that was on that eastern horizon at the second you were born? And that's going to change pretty fast. I mean, think about how fast the earth moves.
Right.
So the second you're born, that's why having the birth time is so important when you do an astral reading, because you want that. And the rising is the rising sign represents how you approach the world, the energy that you put out. It's often talked about as the mask that you wear out in the world. And it's going to be the energy that people who encounter you, the energy they pick up and the personality they're going to see. So they're going to see this orderly person who likes to be particular about things. You're always going to be put together. You're always going to be, exactitude is very, very important to you. But that's not the only part of your personality. There's a lot of parts of your personality. Then we move to your sun sign, which is Gemini. And you were born midday. So the sun is at the very zenith, the very top of your natal chart. So you were kind of up there. It was midday, the sun was shining, and it's right there at the top of your chart. And you've got so much stuff going on in Gemini. Gemini is the information gatherer. It is you're very adaptive. You're very well liked. And because it's at the top of your chart, that represents your career area. So you probably in your career and in the world, your public reputation, you want to be seen as someone who is well liked, easy to get along with, someone who is approachable, who is adaptable, so that very charming. And so when I looked at your chart, I labeled you the ultimate charmer. Sounds right. Ultimate charmer. You have so much going on up in Gemini. You've got the sun as well as other planets. You got the sun next to Venus.
Mm-hmm.
They're conjunct. They're right on top of each other in your chart. And when I saw that, yeah, that's absolutely, that love. And you're probably a very loving parent. That's one thing we see when we see, the sun up there with Venus. So again, you're the super charmer. So we looked at the sun, we looked at the rising, and then we often will also look at the moon sign. And so when we look at your moon, you have a Sagittarius moon. Sagittarius is all about what I call the gift of gab. So when we talk about the moon is our comfort zone. It's how we process emotions. And so when I am doing a reading with people, I say, well, when the going gets tough, you probably fall back to the comfort zone of your moon. So when the going gets tough for you, maybe you're in a challenging situation, the way you process things, you're comfortable expressing yourself verbally. These are my beliefs. This is what I think about this. I need to process this stuff outward. I need to get that out there. And so that's that. You can see these are goals, like they're team together. I remember like out there. So yeah, got that Sagittarius moon. Again, that's again how you're going to process stuff. So that's what we look
100% accurate.
Yeah, 100% accurate. So yeah, we had one phone call with these lovely ladies prior to this podcast, but looked at this chart like, oh, the ultimate charmer here with the exactitude.
I can confirm everything that was said. Oh my gosh, that makes me laugh.
Do you have any questions about that before we move on to Rachel?
I just had one question for you. So I noticed recently that my moon
Yeah,
is directly opposes my sun.
it's a full moon. Mhm.
Right? Yeah, exactly. So like when I had, I was like, oh, that makes sense. So what would that mean? Like, how do those energies play off each other?
So that's what we call an opposition in astrology. And so they're going to be pushing and pulling at one another
Okay.
throughout your lifetime. And so the sun is the ego. It is sort of what I want, what I'm here to get, the personal side of things, that egocentric side. Who am I at my core? And then it's got to be opposite the moon. And when we look at a natal chart, the signs that you see opposite on the chart, so your sun is in Gemini, your moon is in Sagittarius, they're opposite on the chart. They're opposite energies. They balance one another. And so when I look at that, I think, okay, this is creating some balance between your ego and your emotions. And that is how I read that.
Okay.
But there's
Okay.
also other stuff going on there that we could get into because you've got some, some other stuff pretty close to your moon and your sun, but it's going to create a balance between your ego and your emotions. He's
Oh,
okay.
we're gonna be talking again. Just so you know. We're just getting started, okay?
Yeah.
This is like a moose boost for appetizer. Yeah.
Oh, I like it. I like it. It's a tasting menu.
Yeah. So cool. I wanna hear all about Rachel. My little Virgo. You're Virgo rising? No, I'm a Virgo
She's
rising.
she's Virgo MC, so the
Yeah, midheaven. Okay, yeah, that's right.
well, we can actually start there because that's a big thing right there. So the midheaven is the top of your chart where the sun is at its zenith on the particular day you were born. Not at the moment, but at that day, where is the point in the sky where the sun would be at its highest? And yours is in Virgo. And you have Mars conjunct your midheaven. Midheaven is a representation of your public reputation, your reputation in the world. So career, maybe your marital status, how you're known in the community, in the world. And so when I look at the midheaven and the sign that where the midheaven lies, yours is Virgo, it indicates to me how you want to be seen in a professional setting. And so we talked about Jasa being a Virgo rising. We're going to be looking at you as Virgo midheaven. It's in your professional life. You want to be seen as someone who is exact. And with Mars there, it's exactitude and analysis and precision. It's a really good word for Virgo is precision. You want to be seen as someone who's precise, who has the details in order in your career. But you've also got Mars right there, and Mars gives drive. It gives energy. It gives independence. And so you're going to want to be seen as someone who's extremely reliable, dependable. You're going to get it done. You have the drive, you have the energy, but you're also precise in your career. So that's how you want to be seen. So that's what I see when I look at your
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense for me.
yeah. And you're the super Sag.
Yeah,
Right.
Jason's very Gemini and I'm very Sagittarius.
And they're opposite on the chart. Remember? So they balance each other well. It collects the information, Sagittarius puts it out there, but you've both got a good dose of each going on in your charts. And so you're going to balance each other really well. I'm Gemini rising, Sagittarius on the descendant. I'm going to be pulling in that Sag energy. You and I are just opposites on that way. It's great. But you've got I don't know here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 planetary objects, 7 planetary bodies in Sagittarius. And it's also your rising sign. So you have more Sagittarius energy than almost any chart I've ever seen.
That's right. We're sad.
So you also have that comfort zone. You approach the world in a verbal way, putting stuff out there, communicating information. You might also be someone who likes to travel the world. I don't know if you're a world traveler, but your sense of ethics is also really important. These are all Sagittarian themes. So you're the super Sag.
Yeah. Yep.
Firing energy. Yeah, a lot of fire there. And your sun is also in Sag. So I mean, you're just the quadruple, quintuple dose of Sagittarius energy out there. But again, you're going to pull in the opposite, which is the Gemini energy. And who has a lot of Gemini energy? Jasa. You're pulling that energy in because you're pushing out the Sag and you're pulling in the Gemini energy. So it's super fun to see your charts together and see how you combine like that. Yeah. And then third big thing, obviously, it's the moon. You've got an Aquarius moon.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't really talked much about Aquarius, which I feel we could do a whole show on it since we're now officially in the age of Aquarius. I think everyone agrees with that. But Aquarian energy is humanitarian. It is forward thinking, usually comfortable with technology. Also things that are alien, including extraterrestrials, or just things that are new and different. You like quirky stuff. You're comfortable with quirky stuff. But it also it can be very detached. So Aquarians' energy has the ability to step back and look at things very objectively and very detached. So since your moon is in Aquarius, you might feel a comfort zone in being detached, maybe, and you might feel detached from your emotions a lot of times because that moon is that emotional indicator, and that Aquarian energy means that you might feel a little detached and not really understand those emotions and not be feel connected to them. That might be a challenge for you.
That is so spot on. I've actually talked on this podcast before how I basically spent a huge chunk of my life running from emotions and
Yeah,
or when I started feeling them, not being able to understand what I was feeling or even
yeah,
identify it.
yeah. Yeah, so I have a really, really close friend, and she's an Aquarius moon, and she can't cry. Like, she's like, "I don't remember the last time I cried." Me, I watch commercials and cry, and I'm an Aquarius sun, but I got a lot of other stuff going on.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, that's kinda that moon energy. So those are kind of the big things for the 2 of you. What questions do you have, Rachel?
Well, I was just thinking when you said that about the detachment, would that also be kind of why I feel like when I get overwhelmed or overloaded,
Yeah.
like Jasa is a verbal processor. I tend to like pull back. And so it's so cute in our working dynamic because Jasa was like, I'm sorry, I'm pinging you with all these different things today. I'm like, no, it's all good. And she's like, okay, you promise not to get mad at me for oversharing and over texting, and I'll not get mad at you when you go dark for a little bit. Cause we just like understand each other's way of, figuring it
Processing.
out. Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, with that, you're gonna process a little bit differently. Everyone processes differently, and so that's the comfort zone. You go back to that. It's how you process your emotions. It's not bad. It's not good. It's just how you're hardwired, and it's okay. That's how you do things. Not everybody else is gonna like it or understand it. Maybe they don't jive with it, but that's how you are. That's how you
Yeah.
are hardwired.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
so true. It's I know,
So
and
true.
I love what you said about, like, the Sag Gemini energy, and, like, I
Mhm.
have an affinity I'm married to a Sagittarius. Yeah, I never knew
Perfect.
this, and I think back to really
Mhm.
close relationships that I've had, and, Rachel and I, we always talk about, like, the vibe check, right? Like, the second we met
Mhm.
each other and we've been told that we have past lives together, and it just makes so much sense, and, like, just meeting her, and, like, I have a Gemini stellium, and that's, like, a bunch of
Yep.
stuff in Gemini, and she's got a
Yep.
bunch of stuff in Sag, and it just makes so much sense. It's like and I wouldn't even say it's opposites attract, but it is, like, the
Complementary. Yeah.
complementary energies that play
Mhm.
off each other so
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, it's funny because I've had so many people in my life who are born at the end of July and early, August. And some of these have been real difficult relationships, and that's exactly opposite to my son. So their sun is opposite mine in the sky on charts, and so those are gonna be real challenging. It's that complementary energy, but it can also be challenging at times.
Yes.
I mean, what? Have all these friends and boyfriends and people who are born at the end of July, people have the same birthday. Like my ex-husband and my stepmother, they have the same birthday. What is going on here? So, yeah,
Yeah. It's
it's
so true.
so
Oh
true.
my gosh.
One last thing, I wanted to recommend some resources for people because
Yes.
I love information, resources, and books. One of my favorite books when looking at natal charts is called Aspects in Astrology by Sue Tompkins.
Oh.
And so maybe we can share this in the pod resources, but
Yeah.
it's great. If you have a natal chart, you can look through this and it says, okay, what does it mean if my sun and my Venus are conjunct or together in the chart? What does that mean? And it lays it out and it is so validating. I've given this as gifts to friends. I'll go through their natal chart and I'll highlight the sections in the book that apply to them. And then they go back
Cool.
to it and say, okay, now I can go back and understand why I'm reacting this way. And I'll highlight them in one color and their partner in a different color. So
Oh,
then I'm
that's so cool.
off
That
moment
is
with the
cool.
partner. Okay, this is just how he processes this. This is just how he's hardwired or she. So that's a great resource.
Dana, can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
People come to you and do a joint reading? Do they come together typically or just as long as you have the birth
They
chart?
can. Yeah, as
Okay.
long as I have the birth charts, I can just read both charts for one person, or if they both wanna join, I do them via Zoom, so they don't even have to be in the same room, they can be in different places, and we can do that together, but yeah, we can do those relationship comparison charts.
Yeah. I think
Mhm.
that could be really helpful to people.
Yeah.
I think
Cool.
so too. And speaking of, so Dana's local. We have a lot of listeners in Minnesota because naturally we're both based in Minnesota. But people from all over the country can connect with you because
Yeah.
this is not something that you have to be in person for. So We'll be sure to include Dana's information on where you can schedule a reading in the show notes. So if you guys are interested, just scroll down. But I mean, what a gift. We could chat for literally 8 more hours. Like,
Yes, we could.
I want to talk about me and Rachel's conjunct North Node, our composite North Node. I want to ask you so many questions, but we'll leave that for another time. But I think the coolest thing about spending time with you today is that, and Rachel and I have talked about this, like, how do you know when you're fully aligned with your soul's purpose? And seeing the sheer joy and passion that you get out of sharing this with other people and helping them learn through this modality, I think is so cool. And like the example of gifting people these books and spending the time to go through it, you have clearly found your passion and you are so good at it. And I just think that that's so cool.
Yeah, yeah, I really have, and it was really accidental. I mean, my higher self knew it was coming, but
Right.
my earth self did not know it was coming. It was one of those things. Someone came into my life, created a friction point, and here I am. Oh my gosh, what am I doing? Thought I was gonna be a nerdy lawyer my whole life, you know?
I know, that's what happens, we just you can't outrun your purpose, it
No.
finds you somehow.
It's very, very fulfilling, and I could do this all day and get paid nothing for it, and I would be super happy. But to be able to develop it into a practice, a professional practice, is just a blessing. I love it.
Yes, yes, well, you're
Wow.
tremendous at it, and,
Thank you.
I hope we can have you back on the show again soon.
I
It
know.
can
We have
be
lots to
great.
talk
As
about.
regular as you want it to be, because there is an
Right.
unending supply of astrological content out there.
That's right. It never ends. I think that's why my Gemini loves it and brain loves it so much. It's like, there is no end.
There's no end to the information that we can suck up.
Exactly.
So in addition to Sue Tompkins' book, I also have some astrological cheat sheets that my mentor shared with me when I was first learning, and they're very, very helpful. And so one of them is about the different houses. We didn't even get into houses. I mean, that could
I
be
know.
a podcast in itself. But the houses are areas of life, and this cheat sheet goes through the different houses, the areas of life, and what planets and signs are associated with those houses. And then we've got a guide to the planets and a guide to the signs, just quick cheat sheets. And then we've got the elements. We didn't really even get into earth, air, fire, and water, but the different elements there are. So we've got some cheat sheets that are going to give you some quick reference guides to some of the language and some of the terms that we use today.
Oh my gosh. I love these
Amazing.
so much. Well, Dana, thank you so much for being our guest today. For everyone listening, if this is new to you, you can check out Dana's website at brightskyAstrology.com. And, the thing about astrology that's so cool that we've talked about is this can really be eye-opening, not only about learning about yourself, learning about the relationships in your life, and just giving your life a sense of meaning and purpose. So if you're at all interested, if you know of anybody that this might benefit, please be sure to pass along the podcast and go check out Dana's website and book your appointment. We'll see you next time.
Well, thank you. Bye.
Thanks for joining us for today's episode. If you're ready to take your spirituality to the next level, be sure to check out our website, spiritoutspoken.com. There you can download free educational resources, read our latest blog posts, and join the Spirit Outspoken community.
And don't forget to follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Spirit Outspoken to stay up to date on news, happenings, shenanigans, and all things Spirit Outspoken.